deals with everything got to do with working at height, lifting equipment at height, appointed persons. Kevin is a lifting operations trainer. He's a former soldier, lifelong learner, and founder of Inspire. With over 25 years' experience across the lifting industry, Kevin has worked at every level of the field, from operating mobile cranes on major projects to training and mentoring appointed persons, supervisors, slinger signalers across the UK. Great subject, fantastic, and very interesting subject in terms of construction, in terms of any sort of operations that are out there, in terms of lifting, especially for myself. I'm looking forward to this because we do a lot of work in my own business in terms of wind turbines and power plants and lifting turbines into place and stuff like that. And there is a massive shortage of appointed persons and supervisors in this area. So if you're maybe looking at it as a career change, or looking at an opportunity that maybe you might want to change from doing what you're doing, or if you're not really sure about this particular area and you want to get to know a little bit more about it, but also myself and Kevin have a couple of other things to talk about in the show, which we'll get into as we go along. Kev, welcome to the show. I'm delighted to have you.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here, Gavin.
Whereabouts in the world are you for the viewers and listeners?
I'm currently in a place, a small town just outside Edinburgh called Musselburgh. That's where my office is based.
Very good. So how did you get here? Where's give me the backstory, Kev.
To Musselburgh, or to where I currently am with the business?
To where you were as a business owner. Like, where did it all kick off for you? Like, tell me about your career. Just give us a couple of minutes on when you were a soldier and stuff like that, and how you progressed to become the founder of this leading lifting company.
Sure, yeah. So thank you for that intro as well. And so going back to, goodness me, 1995, I'd been out of school for a couple of years by then, had a couple of years as an apprentice joiner, didn't really work out. Well, I was not very good at it, quite frankly, and it was average at best, and didn't connect with it particularly well either. And the person who was working for, he kind of went close to broke and had to pay those of us off that were working for him. And if I'm partly responsible for that with my poor workmanship, I'm really sorry. But then I joined the army in 1995, and I was a plant operator in the Royal Engineers. I was also an airborne soldier, so I got my wings and such like, and I was jumping out of airplanes. And then I decided to leave in 2000, mainly to start a family. I could see it wasn't going to be compatible, that army life, with I'd got married, and it wasn't going to be particularly compatible. So I left, and I had an opportunity to get on the mobile cranes in 2000. So I took that opportunity, spent 10 years on mobile cranes. I was on some fairly big machines as well. I was working for a nationwide company, had spells working for smaller kind of family-run companies. I became an appointed person during that time as well in 2005. So I started...
Kevin, how are you? Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Yeah, you just did. I think.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Your Wi-Fi dropped out on us. So it says here.
Okay.
Can you see us? We lost him.
Yeah, I'm back. You got me?
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. Yeah, we have you there now, Kev.
Yeah, I'm on connected. I'm on, plugged in on the network, so there's rarely any problems. But who knows? Anyway,
That's
yeah.
okay.
So I was saying I became an AP in 2005, so started planning and supervising some fairly complex lifting operations. And it was 2010 I kind of decided on a change of direction in my career. There were various catalysts to that, but I became a trainer, self-funded to become a trainer in 2010. Had a few years developing a training centre for one of the crane hire companies down in the southeast of England, and then went self-employed in 2014. And so I spent quite a few years mainly on the sort of freelance circuit, delivering training on behalf of other training centres and finding a lot out along the way there as well, the good and the not so good. Went through some problems, I was going through divorce and such like, and I'd kind of lost direction and energy from a business. So that first business didn't really work out.
Yeah.
And went into a business partnership, didn't particularly work out particularly well. Had a spell of time back in employment, which demonstrated that I'm not particularly employable anymore. And then I decided to start Inspire in 2020. And all those experiences along the way, even the tough times, I'm grateful for all of them because they've all brought huge insights and different perspectives on things. And now I've got the privilege of being able to deliver training to some fantastic people. And most of the training I provide now, it's non-accredited, so I can be very dynamic and creative with the content and make sure that fits what the organization and what the people need, rather than what a test kind of dictates is required.
Let me stop you there. What did you mean by not credited? So where are we going with that? Like, are you talking about then familiarization training as opposed to actual, appointed person courses? Or talk to me about that.
Yeah, so I do appointed person training. Occasionally we'll do it under CPCS, which is perhaps the biggest card scheme, of course, in UK. There are others that would argue the same. And, I've done a lot under CPCS over the years. However, I do also like appointed person or lift planner training. There's places around the world that don't really use the term appointed person. And I've delivered training to some organizations who work around the world. And so there's certain things when you get the accredited training that they're in the test, and it's not necessarily relevant or useful to every person. So it allows the freedom to kind of use some of that time, remove some elements and add some things that are actually more useful to the organizations. I also do an advanced appointed person course, one I've just delivered this week to one of the well-known construction companies in the UK. And that goes beyond the standard accredited AP course. Plus I do other things like management of lift and operations training, so helping site management to evaluate lift plans and understand the kind of things to look out for when lift and operations are being carried out on their site. I've also got some training going on, like helping supervisors to deliver toolbox talks to their teams. So there's a lot of dynamic stuff.
So do you get companies ringing you going, "Hey, Kev, we've got a problem. Principal contractor here won't recognize your certification for the appointed person. What are we going to do?"
No, I've never had that problem, because typically, if you've got a company and they want people trained as an appointed person, then of course we're all aware that to get on the big sites, you're going to need an accredited card for that. So I'll just recommend one of the, say, CPCS or national plant centres for them to go to get that done. And then I can help them with the ongoing stuff from there.
So that's interesting, right? Because I like, so basically you're offering a service to customers to give them an extra layer of control in the process of lifting. And basically what you're saying is your courses are just as good, if not better, than the CPCS courses, for example. But it's about it's about the curriculum, it's about the right person, it's about the trainer, and it's about the further on education after you become approved. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, the great thing is, Gavin, I don't compete with that. I don't compete with, there's a multitude of companies, of course, they're doing the accredited, ticketed courses, and I don't compete with that. I see it as a different market. For example, with the AP course, the appointed person course, typically...
It's a tough course, by the way. Sorry, for the listeners and the viewers. It's probably... Like, if you think a crane driver's course is tough, try an appointed person's course. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, and have you done an AP course, Gavin, before?
So we've put people on the courses,
Right.
and all the feedback has been, oh my God, I didn't think it was going to be as hard as what it was. And there's a
Mm.
lot of detail. Basically, you need to be able to interrogate the crane driver and be at the same level to be able to say to the crane driver, I don't think you've got that right. And that's a big ownership to give somebody. That's kind of, you know, it's nearly, would you put them higher than the crane driver? I don't know if you would.
That's a really interesting perspective you've got with it there.
Yeah.
What I encourage people, Gavin, is to take a more collaborative approach with it.
Okay.
And there are a lot of people who come off the AP course and then they put themselves in this hierarchy. And if you look at the lifting operations hierarchy, then typically, the AP is up the top. But actually, there's so many people going onto an appointed person course now, and they don't have the practical experience, which was not how it was ever intended. It was intended
No.
on you work your way up through, then become an appointed
Yeah.
person. So, like, if we look at good leaders, like, do good leaders always need to know everything about what's being done? Well, not necessarily. They just need to understand who to speak to and how to speak to them to be able to get that information. So if you've got an appointed person who comes off this course and it only takes them to a certain level, it's only 5 days, 4 days of learning, which is just rammed full of stuff on those 4 days. It would be ludicrous to think that you're going to have better knowledge and experience than a 20-year crane operator. It's just simply not the case. But some APs will then think, oh yeah, I've done my AP course, so I can tell them what to do. But actually what you want to do is understand the limits of your knowledge and when to ask a question. And also, when you got your lifting team there, okay guys, we've got this lift to do. What do you think is the best way of slinging this load? And actually you're gathering information, making the final decision, and then putting that into a plan. That's kind of more how I see it. So it's a more collaborative approach.
Yeah, I like the buddy system type approach. I think that's where we both agree that you're there as a buddy for the crane driver. And then there's the other model where you see companies just using it as a added layer of protection, and it's good to have, blah blah blah. But I don't think there's a grey area. I think in any cases where you're using a crane driver, you should have an appointed person as part of the planning process and as part of the supervision process.
Yeah, well, no, there's a couple of things you touched on. Well, one is the difficulty of the course. And often I'll say to people, what is it that makes the appointed person course supposedly so difficult? And I believe that it's not about typically the level of the content, because the level of the content isn't particularly hard or high. The maths that a lot of people get worried about, they're not particularly challenging. I mean, basically, if you can calculate, like if you're on an hourly rate and you can calculate how much you're going to earn at the end of the week, especially if you're including overtime in that, based on hourly rate and number of hours, you can do the maths that are in the AP course. The thing that makes it challenging is the amount of content that's crammed into that period of time.
Yeah,
And
100%.
that's one thing I'm looking to change, is to
100%.
make it a much more supportive way of learning. So the people with different learning styles and the way they take information in, it's open to all of them, because at the moment it suits academic, immersive learning type people,
Yeah.
It's
I'm
more
glad to hear
suited to
that.
them.
Yeah, I can see why there's a market there for that, because I definitely know of instances where people have backed out of doing the course because they've heard from other people, oh, you won't pass that. That's a serious course. That's very, and it is. You're actually crammed with this. It is an academic. It seems to be more academic led rather than practical led in terms of the CPCS, for example. And exactly what to your point, like, why isn't there a logbook type system where people kind of feed themselves into the overall program, and then they bring someone like yourself in to sprinkle the right dust over the whole lot? to get them to where they need to be. And I think that's a brilliant model. I can see where you can develop that market. Like, and well done for you for spotting that.
Thank you, thank you. And if also as well, this is one thing I've been including on the sessions for lifting supervisors when they're then passing on knowledge. There's one big client, one of the recommendations I gave to them is rather than having these courses, and like companies tend to have an incident, then they'll go, right, we need to stop operations for a bit, we need to retrain people. Well, why not just keep progressively improving their knowledge as they go? So I kind of said, how about we get the supervisors so they're more comfortable in passing on knowledge to their lifting teams? Okay, there's a bit of work to do to get supervisors to that point, but once they're there, then it's relatively low cost. You've already got the time where you're having your briefings at the start of the day, and then you can have 10, 15 minutes of knowledge discussion as well. So we went for that. And one of the things I've been sharing, of course, many people will have come across this, but not really analysed it too much. Of course, there's the VARC model of learning styles: visual, auditory, reading and writing, and kinesthetic. And if you look at it, out of, say, if we make reasonable assumptions, right, of course there's always going to be exceptions to the rule. But if we look at the people who are working on construction sites, out of those different learning styles, what are most likely to be their preferred learning styles out of those? The chances are it's a mix of, or one or the other of, visual and or kinesthetic doing, you know? But whereas so much information that's getting put across, and even some of these training courses are all about listening to somebody and reading and writing. So we're not even using what these people have likely demonstrated through the way they got on at school, then the type of job they've got into. We're not even like using their preferred learning styles to put information across to them.
Love it. Give the listeners and the viewers a sense of an hourly rate for an appointed person. What's the typical going market rate?
Oh, I'd hate to do people down. I'm not now involved much in that, but I see conversations between people where I'm not sure, Gavin. I think you're
in
looking
around
at
50. You're in around 50 an hour.
Yeah, it's typically about 400, 450 a day at least. People are looking for 400, 450 a day. People are looking for from what.
And then in most cases, you know, if you're traveling, if you're in remote locations, additional extras, expenses, and stuff like that. But like for somebody that maybe didn't go to college, you know, is maybe labouring or bricklaying and doing some hard manual labour, and they're kind of going, just, you know what, I don't know if I can last this. Like, the appointed person course is a really quick. I'm not saying we don't want people rushing into appointed person, because it's a quick course to get, as you and me have just described. There's a pathway that you need to go to get there, but it is a brilliant job in terms of number one, financial reward is very good. Number two, where this can go is, like, you could go on to be the crane driver. You know, you can go on into a sort of a more supervisor role within teams. Like, it gives you that leadership type model as well. Like, you know, I think there's great scope for anybody that would do a course in this area. And you probably have first-hand knowledge of people coming through your training academy, and probably seeing them progressing over time and staying in touch with them and how they've progressed as in their own career. So maybe you could speak to that maybe a little bit, Kevin.
Yeah, sure. One of the things that I try to, of course, the business is called Inspire, right? With a bit funky spelling, which is the sort of play on, you know, trying to kind of reach for more and be inspired, as well as, you know, lifting loads. So one of the things that I often share with people, and, you know, I had the fortune of speaking to like around about 1,200 site workers a few weeks ago over in Frankfurt. It's kind of been my biggest audience, I would say, so far. And also when I'm just delivering training to people, I would say, look, the position I'm in, and I'm so blessed to have a wonderful reputation, Gavin, and people who
Yeah.
like appreciate some of the things that I've done, which I'm so grateful for. I try not to buy into it, because that's not particularly helpful, but sometimes use it as a bit of information and use it to help other people, right? And I'll say that, like, I'm just exactly the same as them. I don't think it's an ability thing. I think it's about the decisions that you make and actually deciding on how you want your life to be. I mean, I got fed up of this whole thing of working loads of hours. It was clearly having a problem on the family. And I really struggled when it got to the point where I was working loads of hours and still didn't seem to have enough money to pay for everything. I didn't really have much freedom, Gavin. I didn't have freedom in terms of how I was spending my time because I was working ridiculous hours, often 85, 90 hours a week, on all the overtime with the cranes and such like.
Yeah.
And still, there wasn't really any financial freedom either. Part of it, don't think great at managing money, but so I can see there's lots of people in that position. And a lot of people play themselves down because of maybe some of the stories that they've been told or they tell themselves. I come across a lot of that, and I help people change their story a little bit, Gavin, and say that, where I am now in this position, that a lot of people respect what I do, and they want to be trained by me, which is amazing. Like, you can do that too. It's just the matter of, like, it's not easy. There's no question about that. It's not easy, but it is about how committed you are to doing those things. And of course, something like, there's a lot of people who are on the cranes, the crane operators or slingers, and they've got these stories they tell themselves. There's this saying, right? The outer voices becomes the inner dialogue. And so there's a lot of these people who they were told, yeah, you're not going to be any good. You're not good at maths. And they've now adopted that story, and they tell themselves that. I meet so many of them. And so, like, the message to them is, look,
break the cycle.
If you really want
break the cycle.
Don't let the story stop you. Have a go at it, either get to the top of the mountain or die on the side trying.
Wow. And we went from lifting operations training to inspirational life coaching training all in the space of seconds. Well done, Kev.
Yeah, and we can go back to toilet humour fairly quickly as well, Gavin. So there's no worries, or there's no chunking involved here,
Tell me about the crane operators. Are they engaging your services, the crane hire companies?
I think some of them. Yes, I've done some work for some of them, which has been good.
To see, sorry to cut across you. I'm interested to see, are they following your model and saying, hey, look, this guy has it. Our guys already know how to drive and operate a crane. We just upscale a couple of guys, and we're quids in here. We've got a point of persons. Or are they going the CPCS route?
Yeah, so again, just to be clear, I don't offer anything as an alternative to the CPCS AP cards, not in the UK. Elsewhere, where CPCS isn't a thing, there's companies that just want the get that lift planner training. They'll do that. But in the UK, I'm not often offering an alternative to that. So you do AP, you do it CPCS, NPOS, or one of the other awarding bodies, depending on what's most helpful to you. But anyway, what I've found with crane companies, Gavin, so for a long time, people looked at the crane companies as they were the experts, the professionals. So you go to a crane company for a contract lift, no questions asked. What's kind of shifted is that a lot of the people on site, the health and safety professionals, the site management, they've now done AP courses. And a lot of those are pretty academic people. So when it comes to doing calculations at that level, they make sure it sticks with them. And then, of course, if they get a lift plan submitted by a crane company, they're now questioning the methodology, questioning the calculations. And whereas many, like, wonderfully experienced, practically experienced people within the crane companies, they've got evidence, right, to show that they've done well with their lifting operations, but many of them don't quite find it quite so easy, on kind of verifying their processes, or just being able to articulate the methods that they've used. So that's where some of them are struggling. And of course, if a crane company gets asked on, somebody within the crane company, the technical rep, who's the AP, so how did you come to those slings that you're using for that load? And they find it difficult to demonstrate that. They're kind of losing credibility in the eyes of the person that's asking them. So that's one thing that I've kind of helped few crane companies with. They've got me in. I've done the advanced AP course. I can see that problem exists, Gavin. You know, many of them great people in doing the job, but in terms of like actually being able to demonstrate the mathematics that have been involved, the kind of struggle with it. So I've helped them upgrade on that kind of thing as well. Some of the crane companies, you know, they're maybe just not faced that problem yet, or they're good. Many of the crane companies are developing their people really, really well. So there is a bit of a mix, but it's more about how well crane companies can actually verify and give their clients certainty that what they're choosing to do, the way they're choosing to go about it, is actually going to give that peace of mind and then the safe and successful lifting operation.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. A randomized question within the whole sphere of the podcast: lifting operations supervisor. Are you purely dealing with just the lift side of things, or do you deal in the training and in the education on the logistics of getting, say, the lifting material and the crane to site?
So for lifting operations supervisor, typically no, not more the AP is thinking about that side, the planning of getting the crane and such like to site. So not so much on the lifting operations supervisor. The one thing that I have been bringing in a lot, Gavin, and why that the whole thing about psychological stuff, behavioural stuff, leadership, communication, why I started bringing a lot of that in. Well, it became very important to me for a start. I've done a lot of personal development in my own life, but I start recognising that people getting moved into roles like lifting operations supervisor, like AP, it was maybe because of technical ability and experience and the need for somebody to be moved into that role, but very few were getting helped and trained and supported on the attributes that are necessary to be effective in the role. Like the communication, the passing on information, the positive influence of people and motivating people to achieve the bigger or the collective goal. So those are some of the things that I do work on with supervisors.
Yeah, I would just see a lot of incidents with cranes, especially in the wind industry, in terms of bog roads, not having passing bays where you might come across a vehicle, not calculating the load versus the road surface and whether the road surface is adequate to meet you getting up to a particular, and then obviously you see something on social media with a crane overturned into a ditch and stuff like that. It seems to be picked up a good bit in the last couple of years as more. It's become more and more. It's happening more and more. I see where the crane's actually getting in trouble getting to the site as opposed to actually being in trouble on the site. The site's probably more confined. It's more controlled in a way. It's more supervision. I wondered from listening to you, was there something that you do in terms of the whole logistics side of things as well? So, your highways, your road licenses, your closing off, your escort vehicles, all that good stuff.
No, I don't do any of that, Gavin. No. Connected with it, which is the only reason I mention it, is I've done some training on. So one thing I often put to people, when you do an AP course, what would you say is something that's kind of missing from it? Now, at one end, it sort of just takes people up to planning intermediate lifting operations with balanced symmetrical loads. That's typically where the AP course takes you. At the start end of it, often what it's not including very much of is how to gather the information to enable you to plan the lift effectively. Typically, you're given presented with a scenario with information as though it's already been collected. And that's one of those things as well. Just on access and egress. Of course, the highways side of things, getting the crane to the site gates essentially, is really down to like the transport manager, the crane company, the crane owner on dealing with all that. And I don't get involved with that. It's not my area of speciality. But then the considerations in terms of from the site gates and getting in the site gates and then around, that's very much comes within the planning of the lifting operation. So touch on in terms of gathering that information, going out to site, when is a site visit necessary, what sort of things are you looking for?
Talk to me about, we had a chat in the pre-chat about the burden of paperwork on top of people and how it kind of clouds people's actual ability to execute their job better. Is sort of the concept, or the wasn't so much the concept, but it was the discussion, the overall discussion. Give us a bit more information where your head is at in that regard.
Okay, I'll try and not go too massive with it. I think most people are aware that the economy is not in a great condition. That the UK national debt anyway currently is pretty much on parity with GDP. So the whole amount of money we produce in a year, our national debt is at least equal to that. So basically, it's like, how on earth can that be recovered, okay? Now, one of the ways that it could be helped is by successfully building major infrastructure. Unfortunately, for various reasons, we end up being over budget and behind schedule for building of major infrastructure. Now, with my own experience of going on site, and I don't go on site as a supervisor very often these days, so I almost see a difference from one time to another. It's not small incremental shifts. It's like, whoa, how's this happened? And one of those is the time that actually takes to get started lifting in many cases. With all the paperwork that's got to be filled in, the checks that have got to be done. And of course, that's helpful. But what would be more helpful is if people are trained effectively, that they are competent in doing those things without taking photographs, without filling in another document. So we can look at it as one way that either that the progress of the job because we're spending longer doing paperwork and checks, or it's putting more pressure on the people, actually doing the job. So to then get it done because there's less time available to get on with the job, right? And I think in many cases, like it's then delaying work, hence we're seeing a lot of projects being behind schedule. And the reality is, like I say, some people are then under pressure, which are greater pressure than necessary to get the work done because the crane's only there on hire for one day and they need to get it cracked on, and it hasn't started till like 10:30 that day rather than 8:30. So that potentially comes with making mistakes. So there's an issue around safety. And I've seen things, Gavin, we were talking about before that I've done a bit of research on this and looked at the major players in Western Europe and the high performers in safety. Now, there's some of the Western European countries that don't perform as well as the likes of UK and Ireland in safety, but there's some that do and some even slightly better. And funny enough, typically it's not taking them as long or costing them as much to build major infrastructure. Now, the UK was reported in November last year as becoming the world's most expensive country to build nuclear installations, basically, right? So that was reported in construction media. So that kind of supports this view that we're expensive for major infrastructure. So I think that paperwork and such like, it's really helped us in documenting things. It's really helped us in improving safety standards for a long period of time. but I don't think we're getting the same return anymore. It's putting a lot more pressure on our budget, on our economy, which is putting pressure on people to get the work done, because there's more, unfortunately, we're losing more companies as a result of the economy and such like. And I think that energy that's been put into it. Now, not only that, to complete it actually, I've seen incidents, right, where it's then resulted in stopping the lifting operations because, for example, a load struck an object. The way to prevent a load striking an object is by a person telling the crane operator to stop. You don't get that in any documentation. That's training a behaviour. Now, when you've got 3 or 4 people around the crane, and when the common narrative is anybody can give an emergency stop signal, why is it that load was allowed to hit the crane? Now, you could take likely a 10-year-old boy and say, your only job is to wave to the crane to stop it if you see that load is going to hit anything. And I think initially they would probably be overcautious, but as long as they remained attentive to it, they would be capable of it. So why not groups of trained people on site? Because I think we're almost in a state where there's an element of anaesthetization going on through the documentation and the processes. And I believe that so the documentation and such like, and people are going, oh yeah, but what if you need to prove this, or what if you need to prove that? So what is it that you're proving? Because like, you can only prove so much. Like, what's the greatest proof? The greatest proof is what happened. So what's the best proof of a successful lifting operation? Well, it was completed successfully. And then the documentation that you spent so much time preparing and putting into place for that, and the permits and all the rest of it, they don't get used again. The photos don't get looked at. Everybody's seen an outrigger on a mat, so they don't get looked at again. So how about that time and energy? Why don't you put that into the development of the people so you maximize the chance of a successful lifting operation? Now, as Tony Robbins says, where focus goes, energy flows. And if you're driving along the road on a motorbike and there's a tree you want to avoid, if you're looking at that tree, you're more likely to run into the tree than if you look at the road where you want to go. And I think a lot of people are spending time focusing on things that they don't want to happen rather than maximizing focus on the desired outcome. So I think if we got back to developing our people so they're more focused and more tuned and got a sharper mind for achieving the desired outcome, would maybe see the results that reflect that.
Wow. Jesus. Did you say that you were going to give us a small snapshot at the start of that speech?
Because, yeah, that's the short version, Gavin.
Yeah, my God. I can imagine you in the military back in the day when you definitely were a leader of leaders. We're going to battle, guys. This is it. You know what I mean? I could just see it in you. It just, the whole lot came out there in one sort of speech, if you like. But I'm going to unpick it, and I'm going to be
just real quickly, Gavin. I may have been that leader of leaders had I not been a disillusioned 20-something idiot at the time. Then maybe that would have given it a chance. I still wouldn't have guaranteed being a leader of leaders in the military, but yeah, I was a disillusioned and messed up young man at the time.
Okay, so you were definitely pictured for Braveheart then. What I was gonna do was I was gonna be devil's advocate with you, right? And I'm gonna because you're very passionate. It comes across, and I love people like that are just totally obsessed with their subject, if you like, or subject matter. And I love that about you. And it's great to have that sort of forcefulness of mindset of really passionate about it. But let me just go and sort of go against the grain and let's just have that conversation, if you don't mind. So let's have an open mind about it. It's nothing personal.
Sure.
Money, in terms of what people are being paid, if you pay people more and you look for more competency and you pay for that competency, generally rule of thumb is you're going to get the best person for the best job and the right person for the right job. If you lowball it, then you can go into a territory whereby you're bringing people into areas where they're not fully competent to deliver what they should be delivering. That would be the first thing I would say to you as a sort of a counter argument.
Yeah, what was the second part? Sorry, Gavin.
So you said that... I'm only on the first part. I've a couple of points to go at you. This is the first one.
Yeah, sorry. You said that if you pay people, then you're likely to get best competence, and then you said something else that sounded like a caveat to that.
Well, if you're going to go down the food chain and try and pay people less money to do the same job, you may get away with it, but the law of averages will tell you that person's going to mess things up somewhere along the line, and you're going to end up costing you more money in the long run. And I suppose where I'm going with this is the broader, bigger picture of, you use agency labor, like a lot of tier 1 companies, not so much tier 1 anymore, probably tier 2 companies use agency labor for the very reason that they don't want to employ them. They don't want to have to deal with pensions. They don't have to deal with blah, 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 whatever else. And so then it becomes this murky water of who's paying what and who's getting paid what, and how do I get maximum value so that there's more money in my pocket, and I don't care. That's Kevin's issue with regards to managing that person or bringing that person on board. And now there's a whole rat race in terms of value. And that's what was screaming at me as you were talking was, well, if there's value, if the value was equal across the board, the paperwork, won't be such a big a topic, because you'll do the paperwork, but the value is time. And how do you get the value from time? Well, if you have an expert who doesn't need to know what doesn't have to look at, well, then they're looking at the right things, and they're having the right conversations, and they're not sort of just gawking around the place and then stopping stuff for the sake of stopping stuff because they're not fully sure or they're not fully confident in their own ability. That would be one thing that I would put on the table straight away in regards to the paperwork. And I do understand that doesn't eradicate the paperwork side of things. So to back that up, secondly, AI is coming into the industry in a big way and across the world. And it will be a case where you'll go up with the iPad to the concrete pad or to the hard stand and go, hey, talk to me. Is it done right? Is it, do I need to ask any questions here? And I do see that will eliminate a lot of the paperwork and mediocrity. It'll, people that are probably substandard in this area will become probably middle of the road because of AI. So I'll hit you with those two first and see how you respond.
Yeah, good points. So I think what we're up against in a big way, Gavin, is problems within society. And we can see there are plenty of things that have eroded people's ability to apply sustained focus. So and I do believe from watching a lot of people that the majority of people will only do what they need to do. So we've got to look at these. A big factor here is culture, right? And the organizational culture. That's going to drive a big thing, a big part of it. So there's the saying, you're the average of the 5 people you spend most time with. Mm-hmm. Now, some of the real good employers who are the leaders in culture, just watch what they do, and watch how they remain a successful organization. Quite simply, there are companies that are going under for various reasons. We've lost some big players in the construction industry over the last few years. It's like, look at what they were doing, because there might be indications in there what not to do, and I think that there's examples from what I've heard from people that worked from a couple of those big players, was that things just took too long to get done. People were afraid to make decisions in case they were like now then sacked for it or just criticised. So culture's a big thing where it's appreciation over expectation. We need to be aware that largely people's ability to apply sustained focus has been eroded by many things, by short-termism, by all the stuff that's on the phone, by other factors as well, by lack of sleep, many things. So if you can be aware of those things within an organization, perhaps you can start making moves to then reduce the impact of that and attract also the people who are committed to achieving good things and to achieving growth. Now, I think that as human beings, we're typically hardwired to want to grow. It's just that in many cases people fear that growth or fear change, and they actually allow that to be at the forefront of their mind rather than the desire for growth, which you have to take some risks if you're going to grow, right? So, and I think that often people are unfulfilled. They might think that they're going for something that really suits them and it's a safe position, or they try and gain control by stopping a job or whatever. But actually, when you really analyse it, they're probably quite unfulfilled because they're not growing. And you said about your question about agency staff. That is a big thing. Of course, it's a big thing. So many site managers here. I mean, I deliver training to hundreds, thousands of site managers, and many of them say, oh, it's the people that you get. You know, you get agency people. You can't rely on that. So one of the things I've been doing with one organisation, fairly big company, is going through the lifting hierarchy and then said to the people in the room, out of all those, what do you think is the number one role that you want to be focusing on? If you can nail this role, there's breathing space to improve everything else later, and everything else becomes easier. And I find when there's incidents, Gavin, a big part of it, and it comes into this, the role that you can really nail is your supervision. Like, if you get appropriate supervision, and that's where you really want to be focused on. So let's just nail that. Let's make sure we've got people with the necessary attributes. They've got the competence. They've got, you know, the focus to be effective in that role. Then everything else starts becoming easier, and we can then build the culture in both directions around that with regards to lifting operations. So the people that come on as agency, if you've got a poor slinger, then it's unlikely they're going to come to problems on the lifting operation other than just being slow and annoying people if you've got appropriate supervision. So I would say, like, start there and really drill down on what makes a supervisor appropriate and suitable for that lifting operation. That would be one thing I would say. Just that's your starting point.
I agree with you entirely. And I see in industry where, and even when people go for interviews now for executive positions in construction, there's this whole, well, we have this mentorship program where we'll assign, you know, a top level mentor to you to bring you on as a person and as an individual. But we don't do any of the mentorship stuff at the mid tier or the lower tier, or the, you know, the guys that are coming up through the ranks who are just coming out of college or coming out of school. There's no mentorship or buddy system. Look, some of the bigger companies do have fantastic programs. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen, but across the board, I think there's a lot of work to be done to buddy up with these people and give them, in the words and in the brand of your own business, the inspiration to go on and become something, and, you know, to give them that. There's nothing as great as seeing someone's confidence going through the roof because somebody's given them a chance and somebody's believed in them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that as much as it's nice as it is, I think sometimes in organizations that good performance is not as well recognized and rewarded as would be helpful. And sometimes mediocre, nice performance is rewarded. So sometimes there's not that incentive there for the high performers to perform highly and bring other people along with them. You know, that's the difficulty. So I've seen a lot of time where potentially high performers, their fires are being extinguished by, you know, a slow going, ages to make a decision. Oh, it's my job, not yours kind of culture that does not encourage high performance.
We'll definitely do another podcast another day. We're coming near the end of the show, Kev. So a couple of curveball questions at you again. Knowing what you know now, Kevin, what would you do different in life?
I think it would take, if it was with my younger self, I would take time out to help that younger man just be a little bit more clear on what he wanted to achieve in life, and trust that that comes from a good place, and it comes from a better place than trying to keep other people happy and please other people. I think that's what I would say.
Wow.
If you've got generally decent principles and values, it's okay for you to want to achieve things, and unfortunately not everybody's going to be satisfied with that along the way. When you try and please other people and keep other people happy, you're pulling away from who you are, and you don't really win anyway. So that's what I would kind of go by.
Just as a side note, I think you're doing all right. So I wouldn't be too hard on yourself. Give us a favorite book there. You sound like a book person.
There's a couple. One, I would say, on the personal development side, the book that's had the biggest impact upon me, and I try and read, Gavin, but I find it difficult because it requires single focus. So I do read, but over the years I've done a lot of listening to audiobooks, and that's how I listened to this book, which is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. Incredible book. I quote it so much when I'm delivering training. It was a game changer for me. And there's a few that are outside of that are not about personal development. There's one called The Way of the Hermit by a guy called Ken Smith, about an old boy who lives in a log cabin on the side of Loch Treig in Scotland, and he's lived there for 45, 50 years. And it's just incredible to hear how he's lived off the land, I find people like that very inspiring.
Yeah, I love stories like that. I love them. Give me a destination that's the go-to for Kevin when Kevin is in the car and he's had a bad week, whatever, and he goes, you know what? I'm just going to hop on a flight or hop in to the car tomorrow and head off to whatever that destination is.
There's places around the world I would like to visit, but I think you can't go far wrong with places in Scotland. I love the Cairngorms. I love over by Glencoe. There are so many places in the Highlands of Scotland. There's just not many people there. And I think that the Highlands and the hills, they teach you that, to me, the message from them is, we've been here for millions of years. We're going to be here for a long time after you. So you can come and spend time here if you respect us. If not, we'll hand your ass to you, and I find it very grounding.
I love it. Kev, if people want to get in touch with you, how do they do it? LinkedIn or the website? Let me just check here. The website is www.inspire, as in inspigher.co.uk. It's pretty straightforward website in terms of it does everything it says on the tin. Obviously, your contact details and all that are there. Is there any other way that want people to contact you, as a LinkedIn or?
Yeah, I'm generally quite responsive to LinkedIn messages. Sometimes it takes me a couple of days, so connect on LinkedIn, just Kevin Bennison on LinkedIn. I have my YouTube channel, the Inspire YouTube channel, which many people find helpful for lifting operation tutorials. I would say they are the main ways. One thing I'll be honest, at the moment I'm rubbish at is actually responding to inquiries that come through the website. Often I do, but probably the best way is, connect on LinkedIn.
Brilliant. Kevin, thanks very much for being on the show. It's an absolute inspiration to hear your passion for your subject. Love having people like yourself on. And I'm sure that plenty of people have taken a lot from this podcast, especially in the area of lifting at heights, working at heights, and lifting equipment at heights. We wish you every success in the future, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Gavin. It's been an absolute pleasure. I really appreciate you inviting me on. Thank you.
No problem, pal. Take care.